So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Master Talk. It's great to be back with another session and with another master of the industry, especially in the middle of unprecedented market euphoria and excitement. In fact, we are coming to you at a time when the markets are trending at record highs, and it's only normal to have a barrage of questions and doubts on how to approach this market. And while at such times both fear of missing out and greed to make more together take a toll on an investor's mind, our expert today would like to provide insights into how best to deal with such dilemmas. With that, I welcome Mr. Harshad Borwake, Head Research Equity at Mirae Asset Management. Harshad joined Mirae in 2016 as Head of Research. Along with strengthening the overall research and investment processes, his core coverage sectors include financials, oil and gas, and economy. Harshad has an overall professional experience of over 15 years and has worked with the organizations like Motilal Oswal and Capmetrics and Risk Solutions as research prior to joining Mirae. He's also a bachelor in engineering and has done his MBA in finance. So before I hand over to Harshad, I would also like to request all the participants to type in your questions during the course of this presentation, and we would like to have them answered, before the presentation finishes. With that, it's over to you, Harshad. Take this forward.
Sure. Thanks, Ankar. Okay. Let me just share my screen. So before starting the presentation, let me just set a context. Before we speak today. So macroeconomics, as you know, historically, it has been more a subject of either newspapers or the experts. But if you look at last 3-4 years, macroeconomics has clearly touched everyone's lives. At everyone's lives. So what it started with demonetization in December 2016, and after that we had GST, and then we also saw some slowdown led by US China trade war, and then obviously the COVID situation cropped up, and for the last 18 months or so we clearly everyone is facing issues from the COVID. But nevertheless, these were the headlines for the last 3-4 years. But in the meantime, what has happened, clearly Nifty obviously from 16 to now, or in the mid-cap index has doubled, while the corporate profits grew by around 8 to 10%. Markets grew at around 15% or so. So while this was happening, while all concerns, negative things were happening, there are quite few positive things which also has happened over the last 3-4 years. So in that context, let me just share my screen with you so we can go through structured presentation. Yeah, are you able to see my PPT presentation?
Yes, Harshad, we can.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So what I've done, I have just divided our slides into few parts. So as the the macro, after the macro context, I was looking at in the next 3-4 years. So if you look at India growth story, so our view clearly is we are at the cusp of a cyclical recovery. So next 3-4 years we are going to see benefits from the recovery point of view. Also, I touched upon few long-term structural growth drivers. So where from the long-term perspective, structural growth drivers will be positive for India. And lastly, I also touched upon earnings outlook, both at a index level as well as sectoral level. And maybe at the end, I will also briefly touch upon our investment philosophy, and then our sectoral, what we like, what we don't like, and post that we can take question and answers. Yeah. So yeah, so starting with global factors, which obviously plays a very important role from the Indian economy, or either from the growth perspective or even for the monetary or fiscal policy perspective. So if you look at what has happened in the last 2 years post the COVID situation, while everybody was impacted similarly, either India or any other country, but in terms of response, while again everybody faltered initially, but post the vaccine was available, all the developed economies were quite fast to kind of vaccinate their population, and to that extent those economies saw good recovery, a faster recovery, I would say, versus countries like India or someone else. In the meantime, even if you look at the central banks, so all the developed market central banks had taken a position that whatever it takes, they are going to support the economy. So we saw a lot of infusion, the balance sheets across the central banks increased. India, while on the other hand, was quite selective in terms of supporting the economy, but nevertheless, it did manage to avoid any negative or catastrophic situation. So as we stand now on the global side, clearly, developed markets uh, are recovering, are seeing a good recovery. Central banks, while now there is some talk of tapering given the inflation numbers, but nevertheless, I think given the taper tantrum experience, I don't think any of the central bank will do any abrupt hike, and they would give enough indications which already they are giving, and I don't think there should be any negative surprise per se from that point of view. Lastly, if you look at India, FY21, we saw very strong growth in terms of FI inflow. So there was almost a $37 billion FI inflow in that year. And if you look at the bottom left, we have given some GDP numbers. So clearly, while there is a delay, but now we are seeing a good recovery both in 21 and 22 from the GDP point of view. So when I said
Ashish,
initially,
there's just a small, sorry to interrupt you. There's a small request. Can you run your presentation in the full screen? Because I think it's not clearly visible to the
sorry,
attendees. Yeah, thanks.
now is it okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So when I said initially, there are quite few positive points. I think one important factor which I wanted to highlight, is the interest rates. So while as I said, other central banks responded either by infusing more money into the economy or giving direct benefits. But given the constraint with Indian government has in terms of availability of capital, so clearly what one thing they could do is take help of the monetary push on that side. So there, as you saw, RBI clearly has cut down the rates. So we have seen a rate cut of almost 170 to 225 basis points. So it's, I think, a big rate cut, almost a 10-year low interest rates right now as we speak. While the transmission of this rate cut is not similar across the sectors, but nevertheless, there is a big decline in terms of interest costs across either be it at individual level or at a corporate level. So case in point, just to highlight, let's look at the housing sector. To start with, if let's say 3-4 years back, for a typical 25 lakh loan, if you look at a 20 years, the EMI used to be, right, let's say 25,000 rupees or so. So now that has moved down almost by 4,500 rupees. So it's a big savings for anybody, if somebody wants to buy a house. So if you look at last 8 to 10 years, so few things have happened. One, obviously, the property prices across the India, while there could be some exceptions in some pockets, but has been largely, trending flattish. So no property price increase in the last 10 years or so. But in the meantime, at least on, on organized side, the salary levels have increased. So what we typically monitor is the affordability index. So, property price to the income ratio, it is one of the best in the last 20 years or so. So if you look at the top left chart, so from this index has moved down from 6.9 to 4.5 or so. So this, higher income, flat property prices and lower interest rates. So it's a good recipe in terms of a revival. So we're not necessarily calling out revival, but the point is, all the factors, if you kind of, collate, so there, there is a good, chance that, we could see a good recovery in this sector. Secondly, after interest rates, second positive point, is what has happened post the COVID is that uh, either, so many countries, are trying to, reduce their dependence on China. So while, we do accept that, we cannot replace China, but we can still be China plus kind of economy. So having identified, so India always had this potential. Even if you look at last 10 years back, also everybody used to think India has a good potential to become next superpower or so, something like that. But it has never really happened. So, but right now, one thing is there, at least from the export point of view. So other East Asian countries, while being smaller with a lesser population, even having not so much of a resource, they have been always at the forefront in terms of capturing the export market. So government is now trying to address some of the issues so as to make India, Indian exports competitive vis-a-vis other countries. So one important factor was the corporate tax rate. So now government has reduced the corporate tax rates, and now it is at par with other Asian countries. Second important thing which they have done, which I wanted to discuss, was this production link incentive scheme. So they have launched it in few sectors, and in the upcoming period they will launch it for other sectors also. So this is a very interesting or important scheme which government has come up with. So our calculation suggests that it can easily add to around 1.7% kind of a GDP by FY 27. Obviously, it will be steadily, it will keep on increasing, but at the peak, it can easily add up to 1.7 in terms of GDP. It's a big number. While it's early days for this scheme, but nevertheless, I think down the period we could see lot many companies or corporates moving up, taking up this scheme. Third important, other positive which has happened. So if you remember during the GST, so there was a lot of talk of shift from unorganized to organized. So while we are always, of the opinion that this is not going to happen overnight, it is not that easy. But what has happened in the COVID situation is that we have seen a lot of consolidation, or the bigger companies getting bigger, or the sector leaders within the sector becoming more stronger. One of the reason obviously was that during the COVID there was a issue in terms of labor availability. So typically the larger companies, they tend to be organized. Typically then they tend to be more automated. So we have seen the consolidation theme panning across the sectors, be it cement, steel, paints, or for that matter, more so on the FMCG side. So there we are seeing this theme, picking up big time. And typically, as you would appreciate, the larger companies typically tend to be a listed companies, within those sectors. So for that matter, a higher market share to the bigger companies would mean that, the better performance also on the from the stock market point of view. So the bigger getting bigger, the theme has clearly is there. So that these three important factors, interest rates going down is positive for many sectors, I mean both individuals as well as corporate. So lower interest rates is a very good recipe for faster recovery. PLI schemes, again, from the India export potential point of view, to realize that, I think over the next 3 to 5 years, it would help on that side. And this consolidation theme, is a positive for the listed companies. The other important factor from the India point of view, given that large population still continues to stay in rural area, and it's an important factor from the economic well-being point of view. So rural buoyancy, I think, continues even in this year. So this will be third year of normal monsoons. If you recall, last year the monsoons were very good, and the reservoir levels had almost at something like decadal high or so. So from the rural side, we are seeing two, three things. The good monsoon typically means that farm incomes continue. Farm incomes will be better. Government schemes over the last few years also have put in a lot of money on the rural side. Wealth effect, while may not be applicable for everyone, nevertheless, but the gold prices which have moved up, at least typically sentimentally, it's quite positive. And slight inflation is also good from the point of view of wages, as well as the produce prices. So few concerns which just need to highlight before going to the second part. From the vaccination point of view, while the pace has picked up across the globe, in India also we are almost vaccinated now, roughly 46-47% of the population with at least one dose. So to that extent, I think the pace of vaccination is quite well across the world. While there are concerns of a third wave in some pockets, but I think uh, what is, I think, for takeaway from our point of view is that last year we had a severe lockdown. In the second wave, lockdowns were not that stringent. So to that extent, impact of the economy is lower. I think the ability of the governments, or the fear factor in the general population has reduced quite a lot. So to that extent, I think even to some extent, if there were to be a third wave, I think in terms of lockdowns or negative sentiment impact or the economic impact will not be as severe as the first lockdown. Other risk which everybody is talking about is inflation. So I think on the inflation side, what is happening is that there could be the higher inflation could be one factor is that there are constraints on the supply side. So across the industries, we are seeing supply has not yet come back to the normal level. So that could be one of the factors. So needs to be seen. As of now, even the central banks or everybody has taken a view that the current inflation is kind of it could be a transitionary inflation, but obviously needs to see that. And lastly, as I initially talked about this rate increase, I think given the taper tantrum experience, I don't think, while the risk is always there, but I don't think the central banks will do any abrupt changes on that side. From the longer term perspective, if you look at India, I think three important factors. So demographics clearly is in favor. Secondly, infra spending, government's focus is also there, and I think we are seeing a lot of schemes being implemented across the sectors. And third is reforms. I think we have seen one of the very big difficult reforms which were done in the last few years or so. So just to delve a bit more into that. So from the demographics point of view, I think this point is well appreciated. The median age for India at 28 years. So it is quite positive. So what it means is, the dependency ratio or the older population within the country is much lower vis-a-vis, if you look at other countries. Even China has a median age of 37 or so, and other countries have a higher median age. Secondly, I think in terms of infra spending, so government has a large plan, almost a lakh crore or so to spend over the next 3 to 5 years. While obviously it is a function of availability of capital, and as you know, there can also be some delays on the infrastructure side. But nevertheless, we have seen at least on the urban infra side, metros or so. So that spending has been continuing for the last 2-3 years or so. Road spending, obviously it continues. On the energy side, I think while there is a shift from conventional energy to the renewable energy, but even on the energy side, government spending is there. On the railway side, we have seen quite a a meaningful improvement at first in terms of operations. Secondly, obviously when the dedicated freight corridor comes in, there will see some efficiencies coming in, and railways continues to keep on improving or spending on that side. And on the infra, let's say on a Nal Se Jal or housing, so those kind of schemes will also continue. So the point is, infra spending or the focus on infra spending continues to remain high. Thirdly, lastly, I think in terms of reforms, so the recent reforms which government has adopted. So let's start with housing for all, or RERA on the real estate, or GST, or also there are some labor reforms recently. Well, they are not complete, but they are still in the process. So all these reforms, at least GST or RERA, they have been quite disruptive, and it was also expected that these reforms will be disruptive, and in fact will have a negative impact in the near term. I think all those negatives are already panned out, and now if I were to look at next 1 to 3 year or so, we would in fact see the benefits or the positives of this reform. So GST already, despite lower economic activity, we are seeing decent GST inflows. One of the reason is cited, is a higher compliance. So I think on the RERA side also, I think we are seeing quite a few, I would say, not new launches, but at least from the commitment point of view or the transparency point of view, there is some improvement on that side. On the labor laws, while it's a long way to go, but nevertheless, it will be positive if we want to become better on the export side. So here I think all these reforms now as we speak will start contributing either in terms of more revenue or in terms of ease of doing business or in terms of increasing the efficiency across the sectors. So yeah, so now let me come to valuation. Uh, so here as you this is a chart of Nifty earnings. So the orange bar is the Nifty earnings chart, and the dark blue line is the YOY. Dark blue line actually is a corporate profit to GDP, which is quite low, and the light blue line is the 1 year forward P. So as you would appreciate, last 3-4 years, Nifty earnings, or for that matter, India corporate earnings, has been quite stagnant. So every year, at a consensus or analyst used to say that earnings this year could grow by around 10 to 15% or so. But eventually, as we end the year, it used to be a flattish kind of earnings. But now, if I have to look next, 22 to 24, so we are looking almost at 1,000 rupees EPS, Nifty EPS on FY24. So this is roughly around 22% earnings CAGR from FY20 to 24. So while again, let's take it with a pinch of salt. I mean, it may or it could be slightly lower, but nevertheless, it can easily be 17 to 18% earnings CAGR. And unlike previous periods, so this time around, this earnings is broad based. We'll briefly see in the next slide. The other important factor, if you go back to 2008 to 2008 previous, previous market peak, at that point in time, if you look at corporate profit to GDP, or if you look at ROEs at that point in time, so ROEs in FY08 for the ROEs return on equity for the India corporate was roughly around 18 to 20%. Right now, as we speak, so let's say year ended FY21, ROEs for India corporate was roughly around 10 to 11%. I think it is a very important factor in the sense, for every 100 rupees which corporate puts or we put in companies at equity. So in 2008, that 100 rupees used to earn, 18% or so. Now the same 100 rupees is earning, is earning roughly 10 to 11%. So the point here is India corporate profitability is at a multi-year low. While we can again justify why the earnings are lower, what happened in the last 4 or 5 years, and we can justify it through various disruption. But the point now one needs to know, one needs to appreciate is that over the next few years, this ROE or corporate profit to GDP, which is less than 2% now, it is expected to move to 3%, and clearly this would have a benefit or effect in terms of corporate profits doing well as markets doing well. So this is just a snapshot of India Nifty company earnings. So if you see FY22 and 23, in both these years we are seeing a broad-based recovery across the sectors. So be it auto, be it financials, consumer. So we can put these sectors into 2-3 parts. So one are structural sectors like consumer, pharma. So typically, which are non-cyclical structural, so they tend to do well. And in fact, pharma or IT both have done well during the pandemic for the reasons we all know. But now we are seeing, sectors like financials, which is a very important sector in terms of profit contribution for Nifty. So on the banking sector, as you would recall, after the Raghuram Rajan had asked for the asset quality review. Suppose that all the banks, had to recognize NPAs, and once you recognize the NPAs, obviously you have to do the provisioning. So the provisioning was largely, done. It was done from FY 17-18 till FY 20 or some part of FY 21. So from the financial sector point of view, I think we are past the asset quality issue. Incrementally, as and when credit growth comes back, we would see a good recovery in the financials earnings, and which is already which is that is why we see a good earnings recovery on that side. Pharma, as you know, is a steady sector. There also we had some issues from the US pricing. I think now that is largely behind us. So henceforth, we should see a steady growth on the pharma side. The cyclical sectors like auto, which continue to be at an all-time low. But if we were to look at next 2 to 3 years perspective, we see, we expect, descent. While there are some concerns, let's see, pockets like two-wheelers, what will be the impact of EV and all. So that needs to be seen. But nevertheless, from the cycle point of view, I think we could be at the, bottom of the cycle on that side. On the material side, as everybody knows, metal prices and all have already moved up and primarily driven by global factors. And with China continuing to focus on the reduction of emission, so that would also mean that the capacity in China may not. In fact, they're talking of reducing the steel capacities in China. So to that extent, the commodity prices can remain buoyant at least in the near term. Telecom, again, we are seeing one, obviously consolidation is happening on the telecom side also, but everybody is waiting for the tariff hikes, which could be matter of time if if what government also wants. And also looking at the profitability, they do require higher profitability even to maintain their capex, or if they have to spend more on the 5G side. So the point is, unlike last few years, now we are seeing recovery across the sectors. So there is a lot good recovery which we are seeing. So this is the just an indication of consensus EPS, how it has moved. So FY22 numbers, with the pandemic, obviously the initial period of FY20, all the earnings estimate had got down, but eventually we are seeing recovery on that side. But point to note is FY23 we started with the EPS of less than 800 rupees or so for the Nifty, but now has moved above 950 or so, above 850 or so. So there is a good earnings recovery which is expected across the sectors, and that is reflected in the consensus numbers. And you would appreciate, typically markets also tend to look from the forward earnings point of view. So one of the reason I think for this buoyant markets or markets remaining strong is clearly the confidence or consensus confidence that markets earnings from the corporate India point of view will improve. So let me touch upon investment philosophy at Mirae Asset. So typically we look at 3-4 factors before selecting a business. So there is a process, as I said. So first we do a business selection. There we have various criteria. It starts with, so one of the important factor for any company which we select is a return on equity. So better the return on equity would mean that the capital efficiency is there within that company. So other factors like earnings growth, opportunity size, opportunity size is also very important. So for example, let's say any company, if it already has a, let's say 70-75% market share, and if that sector is growing at single digit or lower single digit 3 to 5%, then obviously the runway for growth is not there. But typically where you have large unorganized sector within that, and the market share of a company is 10 to 15%, then that would mean a good company can easily get higher market share, and runway for growth is there for at least next 5 to 10 years. So market size or opportunity size is very important. I also touched upon ROE, is that would also mean that better profitability. And thirdly, while opportunity could be there, profitability could be there, but it's also important that company should be able to grow. So we do look at historical revenue growth, how it has spent. So once after these, some of the parameters, we filter out, set of companies which we like, and post that, corporate governance or thought leadership is very important. So there, while it's difficult to, analyze in a very short period, so wherever we have history in terms of corporate governance, it's very easy to identify. But in terms of new companies, new listings, so there, typically it takes time to, get more clarity in terms of corporate governance. But there again, objectively, return on equity, which would also mean the capital allocation historically, how they have done, or how they have done vis-a-vis, the peers within the sector. So that kind of gives some indication in terms of, corporate governance of that management. And once after these two filters, then we come at the valuation part. So on the valuation side, again, it's easy to, look at, what is the PE, what is EV by bit or price to book. But again, these are all relative valuation methods. So while, a PE could change, the same company could command different PE at different, kind of market sentiment levels. But what doesn't change, is the intrinsic value. So as far as possible, to the 80-90% of the universe which we cover, we try to do a discounted cash flow valuation. While, it may not be possible for, 5-10% companies, but for the 90% of companies, it's, easy. It's We can do discounted cash flow. So typically we have seen, over the years, market cap or market value of any company will largely be, will largely track what cash is generated by that company. So there could be a periods of, PE re-rating, PE de-rating, but eventually a market cap of any company is, the bottom line is that, it will be dictated by the cash that company generates. So to that extent, we try to do a discounted cash flow based methodology. So based on that value, so as long as, the value which we come up with from the DCF, it is much more than the price, which it is quoting at. So what we call it as a margin of safety. So as long as there is enough margin of safety, then, that stock has a right to come into the portfolio. But again, uh, in terms of valuation, while we tend to buy, or we do like, growth stocks, but will not buy, stocks, or, at any price. So methodology which we follow is, is growth at a reasonable price, or GARP. And coming to portfolio building, so obviously, all the stocks which come in the portfolio come from a bottom up approach, in the sense, every stock has to, has to make its own case, why it should be in the portfolio. So typically when we ask analysts to recommend, we ask them to recommend at least, three-year view, and we don't ask them to give a 1 year kind of view. So to that extent, DCF, helps in terms of, getting a fair sense of what kind of value that company should command. We do keep, cognizance of benchmarks. As you would know, every fund has typically a different benchmark. So whenever we build the portfolio, we do keep cognizance of benchmark. And in terms of, operating the portfolio, we have this core and tactical approach, in the sense, 85-90% of a portfolio, would remain for, 3 years or so, or more than that. But there is, 5-10% portfolio where we do keep on doing churning, in the sense, sometimes if, the market value of a company moves much more than the fundamentals, then we might reduce the weight tactically. Or sometimes if, it falls, without any fundamental reason, then if those kind of event happens, then in the, we would be increasing the weight in that period. So core and tactical approach are, done across the portfolios. So yeah. uh, so coming to, our, what we like, what we don't like, so as we speak now, so obviously it could change in future, as, fundamental change. So right now, if you look at our portfolios, we do like, financials, and within that, retail bank. So there we think, one, obviously the earnings growth is still there. In terms of valuation also, we think there is a lot of room for valuations to move up. So you would see, we have, meaningful weightages on the retail bank side. Even we have some overweight positions on the insurance, or one or two capital market names within the financials. Second, obviously, what we like is both consumer durables and discretionary. So consumer, as you know, it's a large sector which would also include FMCG. But from the FMCG point of view, from the valuation perspective, while all the companies are good with 80-100% ROE, but from the valuation, we think we are not that positive from the valuation point of view. But within consumer, both discretionary, we have meaningful weight. Consumer durables, we have meaningful weight within consumer durables. Allied sector could also be building materials, so there we are quite positive. uh, Pharma also, we continue to remain selective and positive within that. uh, Oil and gas, there are some value names, some PSU names where we think there could be some events where the value could materialize, but within that, a large oil and gas name, there also we have a meaningful weight. On the auto side, what we have done is that auto is a combination of OEMs as well as auto ancillaries. So now there, on the EV side, so we don't know when the EV would pan out, but clearly on the auto ancillary side, whoever will not benefit from the EV. So we have things like lubricants and all which may not be required in the EV era. So those kind of names or sectors we have stayed away from. But within the OEM, I think wherever we find value, we are positive on that side. On the IT, as I said, there also we are positive, but then again, depending on the valuation, we could do some tactical calls out there. Telecom side also, again, we are overweight, given that we believe now it's practically a two-player market and not a three-player market, and then to that extent, the remaining two players will continue to benefit at the cost of the third player. Recently, also we have seen a lot of new age businesses getting listed. So while there is a question mark in terms of question marks in terms of long-term growth and all, but there I think the opportunity size is pretty large. Uh, to some extent, it's a winner take all kind of market. But nevertheless, I think wherever we see comfort in terms of a business model and eventual roadmap of for a profitability, so there we would have some bets out there. On the commodity side, while commodities we do expect for some time it could remain high, but as you would appreciate, those are highly cyclical sectors, so there we would at times have some tactical bets. We would try to stay away to the extent possible from the PSU financials. On the infra side, we are selective, while there's a lot of spending happening on that side. But I think it's very difficult to find corporates on the infra side particularly, which has a combination of good balance sheet, good corporate governance. So to that extent, I think to that extent, the options available on the infra side are quite limited. So that is the reason we have only limited names on that side. So yeah. So maybe I'll just touch upon the hybrid fund, which is a combination of equity and debt. So equity typically, as per the mandate, is 65 to 80%, but at our hybrid fund, what we try to keep is 72% plus or minus 5% or so. So typically, the portfolio, given what we say that given the nature of investors coming in, so we have a large cap biased hybrid portfolio, which would also mean that lesser volatility, lesser drawdowns in terms of any negative events. And as you would appreciate, Indian large caps, while they are large caps from our perspective, but if you from the global context, they still continue to be a very small companies. Many large caps can grow comfortably at a double digit, even if we are to plot next decade or so. So sectors like, let's say, even insurance, well, the companies are large, but one can easily plot a double digit growth for the next decade or so. So that is the reason we keep large cap bias portfolio on the hybrid side. So there on the credit side, it's typically no credit calls are taken. On the debt side, no credit calls are taken. From the taxation, as you're already aware, it's the equity taxation. So that's one of the benefit out there. Yeah. So from the current market perspective, if you look at across the spectrum, so what we say that typically, one should invest 40 to 50% on the large cap strategies, maybe another 20-25% on the mid cap strategies, and the remaining one depending on the investor risk profile. Then he can either go for some sectoral funds. Yeah. So those are my prepared remarks. Then we can take Q&A now. Thank you.
Thanks, Harshad. Some very interesting data points. So I would like to request all the participants once again to please type in their questions. We've already started receiving a few, so we could just quickly address them. Harshad, obviously, a lot of our clients and a lot of investors are seeing some unprecedented returns in their portfolios. You think it's a
Sure.
good time to book some profits?
See, I mean, if you look at last 4 years, I'm not going to the last 10 years or 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in the last 4 years itself, I can count at least 5 to 6 instances where markets have, given anywhere between 6 to 10% drawdowns. There have been individual
Right.
events, but nevertheless, eventually, the markets again moved up. While history is not obviously, we should not, rely too much on the history and what's going to happen. But typically, what we are looking at, why market should perform from here on, that's one of the big question mark. So from the
Right.
corporate earnings point of view, the chart which I showed initially, so we are looking at almost a 20% earnings growth over the next 3 to 4 years. Uh, and this earnings growth is not again, some sector bias. It's a broad-based recovery which we are seeing across the sectors. Uh, from the global side also, we think, there could be a lot of support coming in. From the government finances point of view, I think incrementally government finances should be in a better position. So to that extent, the spending on infrastructure and all should continue. So fundamentally, I think all the factors are there, which should support earnings growth. And as long as earnings growth are there, I think markets should perform. I would not really advise, in fact, if somebody wants to put in money, I think he should maybe over the next 3 to 4 months, they should continue to deploy. Near-term risk, obviously, if there is a third wave, obviously no
Right.
one knows, what it could be. So to that extent,
Right.
yes, one needs to be careful in terms of investing. But I think remaining invested is a better strategy, because India, if you were to look at next 5 to 7 years, you put in, I mean, go into any sector, you could see, growth is quite visible across the sectors.
Right. Uh, any specific views on the small and mid caps
So I
going
think,
forward?
frankly, while talking in such kind of forums, we do talk about large cap, mid cap, small cap,
Mm-hmm.
differentiation. But typically, we do a kind of a bottom up investing, in the sense, be it a small cap or mid cap. Uh, as long as the company is good profitability, good management in a good sector with a long growth runway, one should stay invested in those names. But from the India context, I think one should be slightly be cognizant in terms of liquidity for a small cap names. So typically, when we try to buy or sell any small cap name, given the liquidity issue, there could be at least 4 to 5% kind of impact cost. So on the small
Right.
cap side, I think India specific issue is liquidity. So to that extent, I think depending on the risk profile, I would advise to stick to the large cap and to some extent mid cap. But small cap should be a very small portion of anyone's portfolio.
Right. Right. I think Prashant has a couple of questions. Prashant, if you could just ask them.
Yeah. So actually, just wanted to know about this. With this introduction of this asset monetization pipeline, that the government recently announced.
Yeah.
So, do you see that we may find some growth in corporate earnings in the near future, since everything, most of the things will going to be privatized now. So,
No, so one is, it's a wish list, and the valuation is obviously done by themselves. But nevertheless, if you think, so it's a dichotomy, right? Generally, the corporates or even individual, you or me. So we don't think that there is any business of government to be in the business, right? So
mhm.
there is a
Right.
historical context, why government was there into the businesses. But now I think that purpose is solved. We are already moved towards a free economy. So to the extent possible, government should only be in the governance part and not really into the business part. So
Right.
yes, it is positive. I think the 6 lakh crore or something number which they have given. So it could be a optimistic kind of number, while it may not happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but it may happen over the next 3 to 7 years or so. So this would give lot of headroom for the government to raise money and spend on the infrastructure side. Infrastructure projects typically have a payback period, unless payback period upwards of 20 years or so. While on the corporate side, given that if it's a listed company, then they would want, the shareholders would want a return in the near to medium term. But that's not possible. That's one of the reason why government has to keep on spending on the infrastructure, and to that extent possible, they need to raise money. So I think that's a positive. If they are able to do a meaningful portion of this asset monetization, and as and when the economy recovers, the tax portion, the tax revenue for the government will also improve. So I think this will move into the infrastructure spending. And infrastructure spending, typically what we have seen, as and when the infra spending starts, so that's the start of a next cycle for India, any corporate sector point of view. So yeah, I mean, it's a positive, I would say, both for government and as well as the private corporates.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Thank
Sure.
Harshad, will you be comfortable taking any stock specific questions?
We can't actually. We can't. We can
No,
talk
I
on the
thought as much.
sectors.
That's why I just
I
clarified. Yeah.
can talk on the sectors, but not stock
So
specific.
someone wants to know a little more on the power sector, your view, and how do you expect it to perform going forward?
Sure. So on the power side, so there are one or two things. So one, let me start with demand supply side, and then within the power there is a issue in terms of fuel. So from the demand supply point of view, I think as the industrial utilization moves up, power demand would move up. We are now, so there was a lot of overcapacity on the power sector. From the next 1 to 2 year perspective, I think that overcapacity will go away. So from the demand point of view, I think things are quite positive. But I think the other issue which has happened recently is the focus on ESG, and to that extent, a lot many companies want to reduce emission. So to that extent, lot many countries want to reduce the dependence on coal. So in India, I think almost so more than 70-75% of our power requirement is from the coal based power. So what will happen on the power side is that incremental capex over the next 3 to 5 years or 3 to 7 years will be more towards renewable energy sources, and not really on the conventional power or coal based power. But I think the question, I think what somebody is trying to ask is more from the outlook from the listed power
Right.
companies,
Right.
how they will do. I think what will happen is that, these, even the listed companies, so they will also try to focus, and, they will try to focus and shift their, within their universe, the percentage of power produced from conventional to the renewable. Demand, growth is already, demand is already there. But I think we need to be very selective, while there is a lot of value in some of the power names, but for them, they have to change the perception, in terms of they becoming renewable. But I think it is a more of a 5-year story and not really 1 to 3 year story.
Right. Right. So we have another question. I believe inflation is broadly within RBI's target now. I think the latest figures were within 4 plus 2%. But just in case there is a scenario that inflation tends to go beyond that 4 plus 2, and if RBI has to raise interest rates, how would you see that affecting the markets?
Sure. So, one of the reason why equity markets got re-rated, or typically, when we analyze any equity, so one of the important factor is cost of capital. So when we discount at some cost of capital, so over the last few years, cost of capital has moved down. So to that extent, equities have benefited, but the story doesn't end there. So for any company, so it's a combination of growth as well as interest rate. So I think while whenever RBI increases the interest rate based on inflation trajectory, but I think they will be very cautious in that side, or even RBI or any other, Fed for that matter. So as long as unless central banks get a confidence in terms of economy coming back, or recovery happening, I don't think anybody will increase the interest rates. So I think even if there is a 25-50 basis point interest rate increase, I think that coupled with growth coming back, I think it will be a good combination for the equity markets. Theoretically, it's a negative, but I think as long as there is a growth, as long as there is a growth in the economy, as long as there is a growth in the corporate earnings, I think we should that it should not be a very worrisome point.
Right. Also, how do you view the PSUs, the Navratnas? Do you have them as part of any of your portfolios?
Yeah, so we do have 2 or 3 names in our portfolio. So on the oil side, as I said in my remarks, we
Right.
have few names on the oil side, and we do have some names on the defense, who has some defense portfolio. Typically, I mean, again, it basically boils down to the merit of that company. As long as we see, earning growth, while sometimes it could be value trap also. I mean, we also historically we have done some mistakes on that, but it might be a good value, high dividend deal, but typically stocks really doesn't move for large period. But we have few names in the portfolio, but we are very selective. I mean, even from the banking point of view, where you have large PSU universe, but if you look at our portfolio, we just have one name within that.
Right, right. So I have a question as well. So
Sure.
you said commodities obviously is a cyclical play, and we saw what happened with steel. How do you see sugar going forward, especially with Brazil not producing as expected, and the ethanol blend likely to increase in India? So you see some juice in there?
Yeah. Sorry, we don't have any sugar name in
Oh, you
our
don't? Okay. You
portfolio.
don't even track them as a commodity?
We track it, but not as closely. I mean, no. I mean, for the last 4, 5. I mean, in the last 7, 8 years, they have never made to our portfolio.
Okay. Right. Right. So I think, do we have any more questions?
I have a question, sir.
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
Prashant.
So just wanted to know your take on telecom now. Since I mean, like Vodafone seems to be losing its way, and even Airtel, for that matter, despite of good sales number, they haven't delivered the expected quarterly numbers. So it seems to be a monopolistic business now. So what is your view on telecom?
See, I can't comment on specific companies, but let me give a broader thesis. So we are, overweight on the telecom side with one name, and obviously the Geo, which is held through its parent company. But so what is happening in the telecom is that you know, as you rightly said, now it's not a practically three. I also said in my remarks, it's a practically now a two-player market. Uh, the weakest player out here, obviously, they are scouting for funds. So as of now, the ball is still open. If they get funds, things could again change out there. But I think one of the important factor is that in terms of tariffs, which we pay, telecom to companies, they are one of the lowest across the world. They are even lower than what we used to pay, let's say, 4 or 5 years back. And if you look at the return on equity, for these companies, so they are in a single digit, or let's say they are expected to go in a double digit also. So I think, if the cost of capital, typically if somebody wants to invest in India, they would say at least I need to have 10 to 12% of returns. And if my return on equity is less than, or it's in a single digit, I think the business doesn't make sense. There should be decent return on equity. So to that extent, there is an expectation that there is a case. So last tariff hike which happened 1.5 year back, it was also, I think, it was also because of the profitability for these companies is so low. And typically in the telecom space, what happens is that at least over the next 3 to 5 years, every 3 to 5 years, there is a technology change. So to that extent, they do have to do capex. So they do require money for that. So one is capex requirement. Second, making a decent return for the shareholders or anybody. So to that extent, I think there is a case for better profitability going forward. But we need to see how, whether the weaker player is able to raise money or not. So yeah.
But seems difficult for Vodafone now. I mean, like Vodafone by itself has declined any possibility that they'll be putting in any funds, and they're expecting it from the outsiders only now. So even in the even the government is not seems to be in support for this. So that's why I asked this question. So,
Sure.
Right. Prashant, any more questions?
no, sir. I think.
Right. Thanks so much, Arshad. I think we've answered most questions.
Sure.
So I'll just quickly wrap up. So uh, thank you so much, in fact, for taking time out and addressing our audience with this insightful session.
Thank you.
I'm sure the participants would benefit greatly from this. In fact, to all the participants, in case you have any questions unanswered, do reach out to us through your respective contact points, relationship managers, or drop in your query on our website www.mastertrust.co.in. With that, it's a wrap on this edition, and see you soon with another Master Talk. Goodbye. Thanks, Asha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Bye bye. See you.